Just about 17 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock, welcome back to the Now Morning Show. Now this morning we're going to be talking separation and divorce, specifically as it affects children, with clinical psychologist Isolde Ali-Ghent. Mrs. Ghent, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Now.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, Isolde, I know we were talking off camera and we were talking about how big this topic could be in terms of how it affects children, some of the long-term effects, short-term effects. And so let's see if we can start very simple in terms of what are some of the main causes as it relates to separation and divorce. But first it seems to be that there's a difference between separation and divorce. Let's see if we can get exactly what that definition is first before we delve into the conversation.
In terms of separation, you're right. There are different degrees when it comes to separation. We're talking about separation from a legal capacity, so a legal separation versus deciding you and your spouse are going to take some space from each other. And then the divorce would imply the legal or court proceedings to terminate the marriage as it is.
Yeah.
And then there are different phases for divorce as well.
Right. And as we look at some of the main causes of separation and divorce, can we get into some of that a little bit?
When you think about divorce, you think about separation. The reasons behind divorce and separation are just as vast as the reasons behind getting married. Apart from the extreme situations where you have addiction or you have abuse and you have whether it's emotional abuse or physical abuse, sexual abuse, abuse of children, of spouse, those are definitely the extreme. But in my practice, I tend to find people presenting in therapy to help cope with the changes that come out of a separation and divorce. Many present with a sense of betrayal, not just infidelity, but other betrayal as in broken promises, estrangement, two people moving in separate directions, lack of communication is the number one reason. Not really working on the marriage, but using the marriage to gain other or achieve other goals in life. So again, I would kind of go back to what were the reasons behind getting married and what were your expectations then?
Yeah.
And how was it that the process or the marriage itself failed to meet those expectations? And were you as the person in the marriage working on flexible thinking, or were you submissive, or were you aggressive? Or so there's so many different reasons. Financial disappointments, sometimes intrusive family members, it could be part of it, but these are all red flags, I think, that are at a surface level, and it comes down to what was the communication like and how much effort did each person put into the marriage.
Yeah. Now, earlier you would have mentioned stages, right? Like, for example, there are different stages to separation. Can we talk a little bit more about that? Isolde?
The process of separation is a painful one. Even if you're the one who's decided to leave the marriage, it means that there has to be some form of reconciling that this is not where you need to be as a human being. It's not helping you elevate in terms of your growth, because all human beings need to be able to live an authentic life, a life where they see their growth, their competencies, that they feel worthy. And to make the decision to leave the marriage is oftentimes not an easy one. So even if you're the person who's leaving, or you're the person who didn't see it coming, to deal with divorce, there is a grieving period, like any loss, whether there's death, whether there is a migration. Divorce means that there will be change ahead.
Yeah.
So the same emotions and the same processes that a person goes through with, say, dealing with death, they do with dealing with separation and divorce.
Now, what you would have
And
mentioned as
it's
well.
not linear.
Yeah, yeah. Now,
Sorry?
what you would have spoken about as well is some of those emotional stages. But of course, it could sometimes
Yes.
be a financial fallout as well. I mean, what are some of the things that we don't consider when people get divorced or they get separated?
You know, just talking about divorce, I think it's really, really important that we talk about the stigma of divorce, because that in itself will keep people living and existing in a toxic or unhealthy relationship. Um, Terms like broken homes, they're so harsh. You know, the divorcee, and oftentimes women get it much harder than men. You know, women bear the stigma of, especially if a woman leaves, the
Yeah,
stigma of leaving a divorce versus, you know, the courage to move on and to explore the next phase in life and opportunities, you know, while being able to co-parent with respect and love
yeah,
for the children. So the first thing I think we need to look at is just that stigma of divorce, and how can we help the person going through a divorce, not through judgment, but through love, because there are lots of changes. There's going to be social fallout, people who he or she thought were friends no longer can be around them or want to be around them, the bad talking, the stigma, the labels, it could be very, very painful.
yeah.
So to really support means to scaffold, to fence around, and to provide that counsel and that unconditional support and
Yeah.
love.
Now, as we think about the support that's coming in, how can the person who has separated or divorced, what sort of coping mechanisms can you give them to deal with this very, very tough time that they will obviously be going through?
In this day of instant gratification, it's really super important to be able to sit with it. We're looking for the quick fix. We're looking to stop the pain. We're looking to, okay, how do I make it go away? Well, it's a loss. You sit with it, because it's through that pain, through those lowered emotions, through those hard emotions, that we learn the most about ourselves, discover our resilience, and we are stronger than we know. So we
Yeah.
sit with and learn from the anger. What's making us angry? What do we do about it? What's making us scared? What, you know, find our fear source and deal with the fears, so that we can move forth in courage and love. The opposite of love is fear. But fear keeps us stuck. Fear keeps us stagnant. Fear keeps us 10 years later after divorce still looping on it and bitter and unhappy. It takes away from the soul, right? Love and love of oneself and honoring oneself, and even honoring the spouse that we have now separated from, divorce from.
Yeah.
And they are a part of a journey. You know,
Now,
hating
as we
that person isn't going to make you feel better.
Yeah. Now, as we look at the fallout from divorce, right? So, for example, we are talking about things like in terms of financial distress, emotional distress. We didn't touch on the cultural aspect, but we know there is also a cultural aspect as well. But is it as simple as saying that one specific thing or one specific concept is the hardest part of a separation? If you were to pinpoint something, is there one particular thing, or is it different depending on the individual, their situation, that sort of thing?
There are many, many factors that go into the pain of a divorce. And yes, you are absolutely right. And this goes back to the culture, our culture's stigma of divorce, and that there are religious implications there
Yeah.
many times, or what the family will support. If you say, no, I'm getting divorced, I just feel as though I'm suffering here, I'm depressed, and you might say no, and then you have people say, no, you have to stay together, you made this, da, da, da. And it could cause quite a bit of strife. Court itself, it's so expensive, and it could
Yeah.
be drawn out, especially when you're talking about children and property. And so the financial implications, one, just now no longer pooled, maybe, honestly, think about it. And, you know, were you ever really pooled? Or was one person really doing majority? But yes, I mean, they're no longer perhaps joint expenses, so that's another, but legal fees and just the pain of it and the advice that one might be getting to move forward. That's what society is saying, what media is saying about divorce, you know?
Yeah.
How to get him back, how to get her back, how to get revenge. A lot of the tabloidy shows. But I'll tell you something, in therapy, as I said, apart from the extreme situations where there are criminal activities of abuse and violence, people come into therapy because of relationship loss.
Yeah.
And severe depression is normally egged on by loss. So where you can find your routine, sit, meditate, self-care, find some good friends who love you unconditionally, family members who love you unconditionally, stay with the positives, reframe those thoughts that keep you down and tethered to the woulda, shoulda, couldas and missed opportunities and the disappointments in life.
Now, Isolde, we didn't even touch on the children, but I know that that is the reason why we have been discussing a part 2, because this is such a big topic and we're trying to get so much into a small phase of time. But I just want to thank you for your time right now, because we are out of time, unfortunately. I want to thank you for your time. And I really want to invite you back again where we can delve into the impact this will have on children and also delve into that religious aspect as well, because I think it's so important when we think about the expectations of a marriage as it relates to culture and religious expectations. So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to put a pin in and we're going to have you back on the show pretty soon. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And that was clinical psychologist Isolde Ali-Ghent, actually, just talking a bit about, you know, separation, divorce, its impact, causes, and of course, solution. How can we cope with something when we're going through that tough time? You're on the Now Morning Show. Stay with us because we are going to be right back.